Well, welcome everyone to the presentation. This is Dave Newbery. I know many of the people who are on here tonight. I'm joined today by my colleague Ian Barker, and I'm going to kick things off, and then we're going to have Ian go through the majority of the presentation. First of all, let me go through a few of the logistics. This is live, and the presentation is scheduled to last in total about 90 minutes. We're going to try and keep to about 75 minutes for the main presentation, a few minutes to go through the Academy Soccer Coach Session Planner and Activity Planner, and then also have time for your questions. Unlike typical webinars, we'd like to try and take your questions as we go through the presentation, because waiting 60 minutes to get to your questions that were relevant 60 minutes before is probably not as good as taking them at the time. So as we go through, please put your questions into the box where it says type message here on your attendees control panel. Now, during the course of the presentation, that may reduce in size. If you want to open it up, click on the white arrow in the orange box and that will pull that back up. We will be providing the video for you to see as a second time around, or third time, how many times you need to see it, and that will be available at some point tomorrow afternoon once we have edited the presentation down. On the left-hand side, you'll see the agenda. We're going to go through a few introductions. We're then going to go into the main part of the presentation. Then I'm going to turn to some homework activity that we're going to get you to do, and then I'm going to provide you with your training squads. And these are the groups that you'll be working in on the practical session. Excuse me, I'm a little hoarse today. So here we are. These are the course instructors. On the left, top left, we have Ian Barker, who is the Director of Coaching Education for the NSCAA. We wouldn't be able to have Ian present at all if we didn't do it this way. So this is a great opportunity for you as coaches to interact with Ian, who is the head coach for the NSCAA and does most of the national presentations and creates much of the course content. On the 23rd of March at Pine Point School in Stonington, Jeff Fennell, top right, and myself, you know what I look like, will be presenting the practical sessions, and we'll go through the schedule for that at the end of this session. Jeff is a very experienced coach, far too many accolades and experiences to mention in this short time, but he's currently somewhat retired. He's the volunteer East Lyme Boys High School team head coach. And then in my role, most of you know me as the Director of Coaching for Soccer Plus Juniors, but in my professional life, I am the e-learning coordinator for the NSCAA and also run a project called the Club Standards Project. For those of you not familiar with the NSCAA, it was founded in 1941, so 73 years in existence. It's headquartered in Kansas City, Kansas. I'm sure Ian can give you a little bit of a brief why Kansas City. It's the world's largest soccer coaches organization. We have approximately 30,000 members and rising, and certainly with the advent of e-learning, we anticipate to get a lot more than 30,000, not just stateside, but all over the world. Our membership includes youth coaches, high school coaches, college coaches, and professional coaches. The youth coaches, although they are the largest group of coaches, of course, in the country, the NSCAA was traditionally more focused at the high school and college age groups. So the greatest development in its membership has been certainly in the youth ranks. The association is best known for our coaching courses. We offer various levels of diploma, from the entry-level coach all the way through to the more experienced coach. And then we also have our coaching convention, which is held in January traditionally this year in Philadelphia, and actually next year in Philadelphia. And the number of attendees grows each year. To this extent, this year we had over 7,000 attendees. And really filled up Philadelphia for that 3-4 day weekend. So the course that we are doing, the Level 3 Diploma, as you can see on the left-hand side, is in the beginner level column. For those of you who were fortunate enough to be in attendance in the Level 1 award with Jeff Bennell and I last March, you will already have the Level 1, of course. That was a 4-hour course. Today's course, the Level 3, is a 9-hour course, and traditionally this was taught over 2 or 3 days, depending on the schedule, where you had to attend in person. So we're breaking new ground today. This is a blended learning, including distance learning, so we've asked you to do some reading. We also will now deliver the theory in live online and also on demand. And then we'll also have the practical component, in total adding up to the same 9 hours. But we believe that doing it this way, the work that we'll get from you also will improve in quality than trying to cram it all into 9 hours course. As you develop as a coach and you have greater interest in working with older players and maybe working in the 11 versus 11 game, you can start developing through the intermediate and advanced levels, each diploma having a slightly different focus. On the right-hand side of the goalkeeper diplomas, and I would anticipate that our next venture with Soccer Plus Juniors will be to bring in a goalkeeper level 1 or 2 into our club. So before I turn over to Ian, I would certainly like to just reiterate what the process is here. The tan shaded boxes represent the e-learning components, those that are done at your convenience in most part, and at times that you can fit into your schedule. The only compulsory, mandatory in-person component is the practical session. And if you were to miss that for any reason, then you would not receive your diploma, but have the opportunity at another time to go through the practical component. So we hope you enjoy this session. I'm now going to pass over to Ian. And Ian, before I do though, let me just welcome Jeff, because I know Jeff has just joined us. Jeff, how are you?
Well, thank you. Thanks for letting me on.
And Jeff, where are you joining us from today?
You had to ask. I'm in St. Martin.
There you go.
Well, I shouldn't tell you it was a high of 82 and the low is 78. So I'll be back in Connecticut snow by next week.
Okay. And unfortunately, we lost the sound with Jeff there. 82 degrees. Well, anyway, we know it's not like that up here. So I'm now going to pass over to Ian. Jeff, I have just muted you so that we can avoid background noise. So just relax and enjoy it. And Ian, over to you.
Great. Thank you, David. Let's just see here really quickly if I can advance the slides.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll give you that control.
Okay.
You should be pretty good now.
Okay. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us live. Certainly, your peers will be able to get this in a recorded version, but hopefully a little sense of the live component will be attractive and appealing. So. Thank you very much for joining us live. I would consider you guys and myself very lucky and indebted to both Jeff and certainly David for providing this information in this format. This has shortened your need for in-person time with us. That's to say we all have to go to one venue. It's allowed us to meet from different parts of the country. And you are the first ever members of the NSCAA to enjoy a course delivered this way. So I'm very excited about that, and you are all pioneers. You are all going to be introductory members to the NSCAA, so you will have access to content on the website that is privileged to the membership. And even at the front of the membership wall, if you go to the education page, you'll be able to find lesson plans, activities, some may call them drills, to inspire you in some of your other planning. So please take full access of the website, just at a minimum for content. And then the other thing I'm going to make a quick plug for before I get started is if you know how to access the iTunes store and your apps, there is a free app, completely free. NSCAA is the app, and it has tons and tons of lesson plans, some videos, and some content on it to support you when you're out on the fields. So please get the app. I make no side interest on the app. It is free, but it's just a really cool tool. that said, I'm going to speak for just about an hour, whistle through some of this material, make myself available to you during this material and afterwards for questions, and then certainly David can direct questions to me, or you can through LinkedIn and other sources. We're going to talk briefly about the craft of coaching, a distinction between team coaching and team management, and then touch briefly on some of the key issues in player development which are relevant not only to the US and US youth soccer, but certainly to international soccer in general. And then a couple of times as we go through here, we're going to prompt you with a couple of questions just to see who's paying attention and what your point of view is on some of these issues. So, question.
Okay, so we're going to pull up our first poll question now. This one relates to the question you see on the screen. What age groups are you working with? This will give Ian certainly a little bit more of an opportunity to learn a little bit more about our audience. You can select more than one, so you don't have to just select one age group. It could be more than one, and if you could do that now. So the question is, what age groups do you coach? And your options are U8, U10, U12, and U14. So I'm going to give you approximately another 5 seconds, and then we're going to close the poll, and we can share the results with the audience. Okay, here we go. I'm going to close this one up, and then I'm going to share the results on the screen coming up now. And Ian, over to you.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for that. That's certainly important stuff. And we definitely consider how we work with kids based on chronological age, but I think there are some other key issues here to discuss that maybe make material that some of you would consider relevant to your U8s actually relevant to those you're coaching your U12s, because it would argue that players certainly develop at different stages and so on and so forth. So David's going to advance my slide here. There we go. All right, so my Scrabble pieces, we're going to talk about methodology. In the companion manual, you can see the page reference, so certainly you can glance at this and review later. David, you're going to need to advance the slide or give it to me.
Yeah, let me give it to you. I was just pulling up the questions. Try now. Does that work? Yeah. Let me do it one more time. Here we go. One more time. Try that. Click it and then move it. I think you're good. There we go.
There you go. All right. So, effective coaching. I make the distinction between coaching and effective coaching. I've watched a lot of Law and Order, but you don't want me being your defense attorney in a litigation. And I've watched a lot of ER and Chicago Hope, but you don't want me being your surgeon. So, simply by going to a lot of games and watching a lot of games doesn't necessarily make you a good coach. You may get the whistle and the clipboard, but the trick is to become an effective coach. The picture is a particular favorite picture of mine because this was taken with a group of coaches I was working with in Uganda, Africa. And a nanosecond before this picture was taken, they were all standing up. You could still see me because I was taller than most of them. But they were kind of wandering, their heads weren't paying attention. And the point I was making to them was at this point that if you get down to the level of your players, and of course as I got down, they all got down with me, you get a different level of engagement because you're now eye level and they're more willing to look and listen and they're more engaged. So I really like this photo as a picture of good methodology. In terms of the bullets, certainly practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So one of our contentions would be that if you have a nice group of kids that like you and want to work hard for you, but you give them, not intentionally, but you give them somewhat off the reservation information, you may actually get them being very good at doing it incorrectly. And one of the obvious techniques is heading, which is a technique unique to soccer, an important technique, but it has to be taught correctly because otherwise children will try to do it, but they'll consistently do it incorrectly. So first of all, don't be afraid of your knowledge base. Don't be embarrassed if it's a little bit lower than you would like, or don't be overly confident if you think you're a stud because you played college or something, but just know what is appropriate and what is correct for the kids you're dealing with. Chronological age, I think, is critical, but certainly ability-based coaching is something to consider. So 2 U6s or 2 U8s or 2 U10s may not look the same physically, and they certainly may not look the same in terms of their level of experience, perhaps their frequency with coming to training because they do soccer more exclusively. So I think those things we have to be very conscious of, that one group of U8s is not necessarily going to look similar across the group or in comparison to another group, any more than U10s or U12s. And certainly children will have different developmental stages of sociability and emotional response, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but I think those are considerations in effective coaching. The ability to observe and therefore evaluate is critical, and unfortunately too many of us are responsible for a lot of other activities around the game, so we're not able to observe, or we get so involved in the game that, again, we lose the ability for critical observation. So sometimes the deck chair, sometimes taking yourself to a different vantage point, letting your assistant coach manage training or manage the bench can give you that opportunity for observation. Planning, I think, could be as simple as at lunch at the McDonald's, maybe in the drive-thru, just jotting down some thoughts on a napkin. For those of you that are more experienced, a lot of your planning is probably going on in your head as you're thinking about training all the time. But I do think it's important to make sure that you've got a few ideas about what you're looking to do well in advance of showing up. And then critically, how we communicate our ideas as coaches is perhaps as essential as anything. And we can certainly communicate effectively verbally or ineffectively. So if our language is not set at the correct cognitive level, so we talk about very complex ideas, we use long vocabulary or extensive vocabulary, we may not be effective. And sometimes our nonverbal cues, our body language, making eye contact, rolling our eyes, can really impact how a kid is taking information from us. So I think these are all key considerations in effective coaching.
Ian?
Yeah, please.
Can I just remind everyone at this point that if you do have any questions as we're going through the slides, please send them in a timely way, and then we can hold or at least freeze when we go from one slide to another, and then Ian can answer your questions. So please send them in. There's not such a thing as a bad question. We'll answer them, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, thanks, David. So in our manual, which is typically conducted as a discussion, a live discussion in the classroom, but for the purposes of this evening, it's me leading it. We want to understand why the kids that you have in your program are playing. I would argue that perhaps the very youngest ages, they don't make a formally conscious decision. They're enrolled because of their parents' enthusiasm, and perhaps the kids understand their friends are going. So typically, the children are, in the initial stages, they're coming to soccer for the first time, but if you get into the 10s, 12s, 14s, they're making a conscious decision to play. Excellent research out of Michigan State University a number of years ago found that children's number one, self-reported for children, was they come to have fun. Fitness, be with friends, but the concept of winning in the children's thought process, and we're talking children in the ages that you guys coach, was not about winning and out-competing people. It was much more towards the somewhat noble virtues of sport, and that would be fun, fitness, friendships. Why do we coach? I think it's worth considering. You know, are you there because David conscripted you, because you were the last one standing in the room, or do you actually enjoy being a parent, being a soccer parent, but also taking some extra responsibility to help these young people in their involvement? So we would talk about that. Success, with all due respect, there is not a significant Twitter feed or Facebook page dedicated to the most successful wins and losses coach in Stonington, Connecticut. So success can certainly be measured in wins and losses, and we can tell the world about those wins and losses. But I would argue that one of the great benchmarks for a program is the retention of players from year to year within the programming. So if you're doing a really bang-up job at the under 8 level, and the majority of your children move through into the 9s and 10s because they enjoy soccer, they have other alternatives, but they've enjoyed it, I would argue you've done a very good job, and I would think that's a wonderful measure of success, which would be retention. And then certainly if you have the ability to evaluate progress in individual and group technical ability and competitiveness and so on and so forth, those are great measures too. But I think the key is, can we keep more of these young people involved in a very healthy activity and a family activity to boot. And then certainly there are some important considerations for those of us who are deemed to be leaders in the game and the development of players and the development of the U.S. soccer culture, both on the men's and the women's side, about the responsibilities of youth parents, so youth coaches, as to helping our national teams be more successful in subsequent World Cups. And a lot of that has to do with small-sided games, and then the way we teach children and what we teach them and when we teach them. So we'll try and get to some of these too. And David, a quick question, I believe.
Yes, we have a question, but we've also received a question in from Mark, who asked a question about heading, and asks if we are starting to lean away from heading with players at young age due to concussion.
It's a great question and a very contentious one. I'm not a neurosurgeon, but I've read the research and I've read the articles. I think it's critical that, and this will be happening with the NSCAA, that our coaches are familiar with basic concussion protocols, evaluations, and there's some really good free content out there. It takes 15, 20 minutes to go through, and it helps us all understand and help to recognize concussion. There is very, very conflicting data on the impact of heading, and there are some people, some top scientists who believe that it's actually an overstated concern, and of course there's some recent information in the Washington Post which would be contrary to that heading is particularly dangerous. I would argue that certainly physiologically under 6, under 8 children are not predisposed physically to be able to perform the technique of heading efficiently. So I don't think it should be a physical priority and certainly not a technical priority at the younger ages. But in my opinion, and it's an opinion based on my research, is that I do think heading in general is a perfectly safe technique for 12s, 13s, 14-year-olds to be practicing. We have to be mindful of head-to-head injury, head-to-ground injury, but I do believe if we teach the skill well at the 12s and 14s, it can be done, it can be perfected and is okay. That's an opinion.
Great. Okay, so here we go. I've pulled up the question on the screen, so those of you who haven't answered it, at the end of the season, you will be happy if, and then there are 5 possible answers. You can answer more than one, and we're going to close this in about 2 seconds. Here we go, and it's now closed. Okay, Ian, let me share this with everyone and see what your observations are about our coaching group here in Southeast Connecticut, Southern Rhode Island.
That's great. I am very grateful to those of you that fall into 23 and 14% categories, because I would certainly be in that category. I would like to see my team be competitively relevant, and it would be nice for the kids and for me and the parents if we were able to recognize that success with some trophy, albeit a faux marble trophy with a plastic player on the top. So I don't think there's anything wrong with being down there in the those 2 latter categories. But I do believe, and I really sincerely believe this, and I've coached extensively in America and Great Britain, that the key responsibility for those of you at these ages in the programs that I'm familiar with that you're running is that the children have a good experience. I believe if they're having a good experience, then they will be more inclined to listen to you, to learn from you, and to improve. And so if those things are happening, some of the stuff at the lower, some of the other stuff will take care of itself. So we must make it soccer relevant enjoyment of the experience. We can't just bribe them into enjoying it. But I really do believe that the one that you guys have voted on the highest is the priority above all else. I believe if you take care of that, the other four categories to some extent will take care of themselves. So good for you all on that. Good stuff.
We've got to, while I take this survey down, we have a follow-up question from Paul and asks, at what age would you recommend discussing winning the game with your team?
Okay. I would argue that if you put 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds in blue shirts and red shirts and put one ball out there, and you have some parents that are enjoying it, they have a concept of competition. I think it's probably more like 8, 9, 10, where they can actually keep a track of the score. So at the end of at the end of an under-6 game, if all the parents are happy, the children will probably not know who got more goals than the other team. But I would argue that as we move into the under-10, under-11 age groups, we're talking about being competitive. We're talking about being competitively successful, and one of the measures for competitive success is winning. Another measure is being closer in competition with an opponent than you were perhaps a week before or a month before. So I think we're certainly seeing competition and keeping track of results and things like that at the under-10s, and certainly at the under-12 age group. So I'm thinking under-10, under-12, and if we can put it off a little bit longer, I'd be okay with that.
Tom and Chris, we've got your questions. We'll take those in a couple of minutes. We'll let Ian go to this next slide.
Okay. Yeah. So this is probably language you're familiar with. This notion of child-centered. So if you as coaches are finding that you are the center of attention more, or the parents or the officiating is the center of attention more, we've probably lost the thread of what we're doing. So we want to produce for the kids challenges that are relevant to them and are likely to occur in the competition that they're able to go into on a Saturday. So we're always looking to create an appropriate level of challenge. We want to make sure that our activities are movement-based because the game is movement-based. So there may be lines in your activities occasionally, but there'll be very short lines, and the lines will be to give the kids an appropriate work-rest ratio. It won't be because they're waiting an inordinate amount of time for a turn ago. And then certainly frequency. So if they're moving, and they're moving frequently, and they're getting frequent opportunities to see the ball and interact with the ball and interact with players, those would be the types of activities that we would be trying to create in our training environment. And those would certainly mean that we're child-focused, and it's not the coach giving a lecture or an excessive demonstration. It's the children experiencing the opportunity. And then one of the best ways to achieve these things, and which is one of the best things that kids like to do, is small-sided games. So 8 kids is 2 games of 2-a-side, or 9 kids is 1 really good game of 3-a-side with 1 team on deck, and you're subbing them in or you're rotating the teams every 2-3 minutes. What we like about small-sided activities, small-sided games, is they get tons and tons of opportunity to repeat technique. And of course, if your training has been good, they're trying to practice good technique. And then they get lots of opportunities for very small decisions based on only 2 to 3 to 4 kids on the field, as opposed to the real game, or the adult game, which is 22 on the field, which is an incredible amount of complexity and cognitive challenge when you're 60 yards away from the ball and you're meant to be engaged. However, in the small-sided activity, lots of ability for repetition. So these are some of the key things we're looking for when we talk about kid-centered. I think my colleague Jeff would agree with me on this one, that as a coach, you're not the person that inflates the balls, manages the subs, and then sends out the email reminder. You have a really wonderful opportunity and perhaps even a responsibility So first of all, facilitating. I liken this to a teacher. You may be a great teacher, but if you don't have a chalkboard, a whiteboard, a PowerPoint presentation, it's much harder to be an effective teacher. So you need to facilitate an environment. You probably need to have a good, safe space, perhaps some lines, some cones, some scrimmage vests. You need to have an appropriate number of breaks for water, some protocol for the kids who want to go to the bathroom or need to clean up a bloody nose. But part of our responsibility is to facilitate that environment. One small point where we all fall down is flat soccer balls. That's a failure to facilitate a good environment. If the ball's squishy, it's difficult to play. Certainly educator, teacher, I think that's pretty much what we understand the role of a coach to be. So taking what information you have to share and making sure you can find the effective way of getting it across. And I do think mentor and guide. So we'll talk a little bit here in a second about guided discovery. But I do think that coaches in our culture are certainly looked up to. And the word coach, the children refer to you as coach or Coach Barker or Coach Vinnell. I do think we have a role and a responsibility there. I think a coach who is profane in their language, is animated on the sideline, is disrespectful of authority, perhaps the referee, is not really giving the kids a great image of what it is to be respectful of authority, which I think we'd like our kids to be if our coach isn't that guide, as it were. And then there's some really good research on this. I can't cite it right now, but there is some research that says that in addition to the parent guardian, very often children will report their coach and their teachers, but certainly the coach is one of the most important adults in their lives and where they get their primary adult interaction outside of the family environment, which kind of makes sense. So we aren't just the person that has them for 75 minutes. We're a person that maybe they think about and they're concerned about doing well for, and certainly at the end of the season when you get the thank you cards and the cake and the pizza coupons, you do begin to appreciate that you are important to these young people.
Let's take a question if we could, Ian.
Yeah, sure.
We have Niels sent in a question. He says, would you mix different skill levels in small-sided games, let's say for the U10, U12 age groups?
Yes. I think ability-based training, where you put the A team and the B team together, there's a lot of reason for doing that, because you want children to have a challenge in training and certainly in competition that is appropriate for them. So if you have a group of players and there is a clear point where some are just more advanced physically, technically, they're more experienced, I think there is a reason to break them apart for the benefit of both groups. However, excuse me, there is tons of examples, and one of the best and most famous is Ajax of Amsterdam, where they are very concerned about bringing all their players at a certain age group into training environment and then splitting them up and working them, all the defenders together or all the attackers together, or occasionally mixing the abilities and putting, let's just say for sake of argument, 2 strong players on a team on each side and then 2 slightly lesser players, and challenging the lesser players to compete and challenging the more talented ones to work out how to deal with their teammates. And then, of course, you can add some rules. So if the most mature kid scores the first goal, he or she cannot score the second one. They must make sure they're the assist player. So I believe it's a blended approach. What I wouldn't like to see is you have exclusively an A and a B team, and you never look to bring them together, because you will create disparity, and you'll probably have a very tough time moving A players down to the B team, and you'll also have a tough time finding talent in the B team if it's never been exposed to higher levels. So I think a blended approach is appropriate. David, would you like me to continue? Okay, not hearing David, I will continue. So a couple of things about teaching mechanics that is endorsed by the NSCAA. My colleague Jeff would endorse this, and I really believe in this protocol for you as coaches having the best sessions that you can possibly have. You identify the type of activities or the theme of your session, and you develop those activities from simple to complex. That may mean that some of your games don't even have a ball in to start with, and the children are just simply learning the boundaries, the way the players move, where the goals or the end zones or the targets are, and you don't even have a ball. And then certainly it becomes more complex. The ball is there, opponents are there, direction is there, and ultimately even numbers, 2 goals in a small competition. So we really believe in that protocol. And we also therefore believe that you plan progressively. So you have, let's say if you're working on shooting, you start off your session talking about the techniques of shooting, the body position, the plant foot, the surface of the ball, follow through, weight of the shot. And then you start to bring in pressure on the shot. So now the player has to shoot round an opponent, maybe take the ball to a different foot, and then you make it into a game where there's now a goalkeeper, and there's perhaps a teammate to pass it to if the shot's not on, and then you go to the game. So that's a crude example of progression. 3 ways in our US soccer vocabulary that we talk about when we're talking about delivery styles, and none of these in of themselves is the exclusive way to go. So I think you have to choose and modulate back and forth through this. Command is something that's typically unpopular with high-minded philosophical coaching individuals, but there's a very important place for command. So command would be where you simply instruct. You say, I'd like you to do this. I'd like you to put your non-kicking foot beside the ball and keep your head down. It's not really that type of information. It's not the sort of information where you just want to say, make it up yourself, because if they put their foot too far behind the ball, the technique will break down. If they get the wrong part of their foot on the ball, their technique will break down. So there will be times where it's completely appropriate to tell the children what your expectation is and to, for want of a better expression, demand a particular practice. That's certainly okay. What is more interesting overall, and which is what most senior coaches are doing now, is the Socratic approach. So we're asking a question, an open-ended question, not one that ends with either yes or no, but something which allows the kid to perhaps give you some feedback. And I like that approach. You just passed the ball to John. Why did you pass to John? And if you phrase it correctly, it doesn't always have to be that was the wrong choice, but you're asking them to explain what their thought process was. Why did you decide to shoot the ball with your left foot? Maybe it's because it's your dominant foot, or maybe you know it's not their dominant foot, but you're appreciating and acknowledging the fact they tried to use their weaker foot. And then the last one is kind of Socratic, but what we're talking about there is saying things like, show me a way to play this game. Show me a different way to solve this problem. So you're asking the kids to resolve issues, problems, technical or tactical, but you're helping guide them because you're giving them some prompts. Perhaps you're giving them some information at times, but you're guiding them through this process of discovering potential solutions. And we certainly want them to come up with multiple solutions. And you're going to have some creative kids, and certainly at the under 8, under 10 level, there really is no wrong answer. And maybe at 12, 14, they're starting to mess about with you a little bit. But I really believe in blending these 3 different approaches in terms of delivery. David, I don't hear you, and I don't hear a question, so I'm going to keep going, if that's okay. Okay. So this teaching methodology appears in all of our courses in some form, even at the most senior level. And so, David, the number 1 tool in the coach's toolbox used to be stop the session, correct or coach the point, do a quick rehearsal of the correction, and then restart the activity. So the stop, coach, rehearse, restart, or some form of that, the freeze methodology, used to be pretty much our exclusive coaching tool. And what has happened with that tool is inevitably people who aren't very good at it have given it a very bad name, and that's to say it's a lot of stopping, interfering with the flow of play, a lot of children looking around, chewing the grass, pouring Gatorade on their head because you're giving them a thesis on coaching and you stop their activity and they were having a good time. So stop, coach, rehearse, restart is a very valid teaching tool. But if you can't do it quickly and with relevance, and you do it where you're continually keeping the kids inactive, then I would stay away from that tool. But rather than just ignore it, be aware of it, practice it, and keep it in there as one of your tools. A really nice option is coaching an actual stoppage. So when the ball has gone out of play and there is a short break in the activity, maybe there's a time where you can put in a little bit of coaching. So natural stoppages. Coaching the individual, children like it if they know their their name is used, they know that you are paying particular attention to them. And also, some of the information you want to give won't be necessarily valid or important to all the children. So maybe it's a point that you only need to make to one child or one or two. A couple of ideas. Pull the child out of the activity or the game. Let the game keep playing. They can play with one player less, everybody will be fine. And talk to the kid. Sub the kid out during your game and make your coaching point. If you've got an activity or activities where you've got lots of mini groups, maybe you stop one group of individuals and address what they're doing and let all the others keep playing. So I'm a big fan of coaching the individual. I think it really makes your information sticky and relevant for certain kids at certain times. Coaching the flow is not commentating, and it is not white noise. It is very much watching the activity and saying, good job, can we try to play a little bit faster? Good job, let's make sure we're using the inside of our foot when we're passing. Really nice job on that attack, but don't forget to recover defensively. So short, sharp, helpful pieces of information, but when you say them, you're pretty confident the kids can understand them and act upon them, and that would be coaching in the flow. It wouldn't be commentating, and it wouldn't be white noise. So hopefully you can read about it in the manual, obviously, and think about it. And then finally, and this is what is so cool about being well-versed with some of the training activities and the process you're going to go through with David of creating training activities, is if you can come up with a great activity that because of the way that you structure it, and then you can manipulate some of the variables, like where the goals are, the size of the field, the number of balls, the number of repetitions, the length of time, that the coaching and the understanding comes out through the children's ability to execute the activity. And so this now becomes part of that guided discovery where you've just created a learning environment and you don't even have to talk anymore. Once you've explained the game, the children are out there solving the problems of the game, and then occasionally you'll help them. So I love this concept, and I really love the graphic I got from Presenter Media. But if you can understand those 5 tools and you can employ those 5 tools at different times, you'll be a very, very effective teacher. And trust me, your children might not explicitly be able to understand what you've been doing, but they will really enjoy it because there'll be a blended approach to your delivery.
Can you hear me now, Ian?
Yes, I can. There you are.
Okay, I had to have a headset change. I kept on saying stuff, but you weren't listening. Anyway, we have a couple of questions. A comment from Tom. Tom's comment was that, and it goes back to the question about winning trophies and wins, and he says that he's inclined to praise for proper execution of training techniques than to reward it with training, with trophies. I'm assuming you would agree with that as well?
Yeah, I think that I believe, and I think we can probably all think of examples as somewhat mature adults, that an interaction with an adult which was based on praise or recognition is far more memorable to us now than the foam marble plaques with the little plastic men or women on it. So I would absolutely agree with Tom. Positivity, affirmation, acknowledgement, when it's appropriate, from the coach and the adults is much more powerful than winning trophies. I also I know this is difficult in our American sport culture, but I think it's okay to give participation awards or acknowledgement. I think it's great if at the end of the season all the kids in the club get recognized for their seasons-long commitment. And I'm a huge proponent that we must do less tournaments in our culture and more festivals. So even those of you at the U14 level, instead of going to a weekend-long tournament, which is basically attrition, so that at the end of the weekend, when everybody's tired, the last team standing gets the trophy. I like to have the events where you go in, you know you're going to play 3 competitive games. You as the coach can experiment with your rosters. Everybody's still there at the end of the event as opposed to gone home because they got knocked out. Less stress on your referees, less stress on the players and the parents. So I think there are ways of managing our environment which can celebrate achievement but doesn't have to get us down to last man standing. And a bit long-winded, I apologize on my soapbox, but Tom, I really do appreciate your observation because I think our power as adults interacting with these young people, sometimes we underestimate it. So a kind word and affirmation, I think, is worth 1,000,000 trophies.
We have 2 questions in from Chris. I'll take the first one. They're quite long, so I'm going to paraphrase if I can. Do you feel that parent participation from the sideline has a positive or negative or negligible effect on player development?
I think that positive clapping, oohs and ahs, cheering, I think that has a positive effect on player development because I think the children feel appreciated, and I think that expression of appreciation aids retention and assists them in wanting to do well, and I think can potentially have an influence on their ability to do homework and try to perfect their skills and do better if they're appreciated for it. So they like it and they're getting acknowledged. Where I think, obviously, I'm sure we're all kind of aware of this, but the role of this parent coach, or excuse me, the parent on the sideline is to support the environment and support the coach. And what we don't want to do is be giving the children coaching information, and certainly we don't want to be telling the children what to do because that's at odds with what the coach is trying to do. And I believe that type of information can be counterproductive, potentially stressful, and lead to dropouts. So I think we as coaches educate our sideline on what we're looking for, and this is not warm, fuzzy feely. I think this is really, if we do it well, we're talking about player retention and player development, and good, robust numbers and children looking to improve.
If I could just add, I know I'm getting you to shoulder the majority of this, but if I can just add at this point, Chris, that I just did an assessment for a club not too far from us that encourages their parents to stay in the parking lot while their children are training. It's my advice and guidance to them that that is completely the wrong approach, and what they should be doing is actually reversing that model and providing those parents with much more ability to become engaged in their child's learning experience. And as you know, Chris, because I know you're a school teacher, that there's a lot of research, a mountain of it, that clearly indicates that at school, parents that are involved in their children's education, those children are often more higher performers, much happier home life, much more engaged with the school, and the relationship between the school and the parent is so much better. So I certainly believe, as hopefully we've demonstrated with Soccer Plus Juniors, that we want parents on the sideline, we want them asking questions, and we want them engaged in their children's experience because that will only make our job easier. So, Ian, if you'd like to continue on, we'll get to other questions in a minute.
Yeah, I can echo what you just said, David, 100%. The silent Sundays where the parents aren't allowed to make a noise, I think is a shocking idea. And excluding the parents from the kids' experience, I think, is a shocking idea. So I'm 100% with you, David. So hopefully this will get some of your attention, because here's a model training session that I think you could probably pull off with your under 8s, and I think would be a great session for your under 14s. And what I want to show is the session, but how I build the session when I'm talking about progressive, and also methodology. Excuse me. If you do go to the NSCAA website, go to education, click on activities, you can find lots of these little diagrams with text underneath them, these little one-hit diagrams. So if you like this part of our session tonight, you can find this content for free online at the NSCAA.com education page. So here's what we've got. Based on my assessment of the children's size, technical ability, I made my spaces 12 by 18. You might make them a different size for the session that you're doing, the children that you have. But I've decided that that size is right for this group of players. On the left-hand side as we look, the ball is played by a server to a player running into the grid who then tries to get to the goal at the end. As that ball is played, a white player comes out, and now she is the defender. So it's a little 1v1 battle in the grid. And of course, over here on the right-hand side as we look, the ball is played by a white server to a white player coming in, and then a black player is coming out to be the defender. So these are 1v1s. You could coach exclusively the action of the player receiving the ball. And if you did that, you'd be talking about attacking. So first touch, dribbling, can you shoot? Do you try to dribble by the person? Do you have to shield the ball? So you could talk about the player who is exclusively receiving the ball. And then what you would do, of course, is you'd have every child would be getting an opportunity, as you rotate them, to be that player. And so you would be focusing on the first player. If, however, you decided to address the red arrow and how the defender comes out and how quickly they come out and how they seek to defend, your session for all the children would be more on defending. But you can see here we get lots of repetition, and I like to have a server. It could be the coach, it could be another player, rather than the other way around where the ball comes straight from the forward or straight from the defender. So I like the server. Let's see here. Oh, and the other part is this space in the middle of our field. This is designed for you as the coach to go in and coach in, and it also keeps the children safe because their common sideline doesn't exist. And here we go with the development of this activity. So we made the space a little bit bigger, just move a couple of cones. And where you see the yellow cone now, you see the second defender who comes into the activity to join the first defender in a 2v2. So we've just made these 2v2 battles now. And that's how we've set up our activity. Now what's kind of interesting about this one, if you look here at the two black players in the left-hand grid, and you'll see that the defender we originally had is now helped by the defender coming from the yellow cone. And so it's kind of 2 versus 2, and they're faced on. But if you look at the second grid, the two whites are attacking. There's a black defender where we started, but this black defender now comes from behind the action. So he has to kind of get goal side before he can join in. And so what I'm trying to point out to you here is, just by manipulating the starting position, just one variable, you can create different scenarios, in this case for the defenders. So this is how I would progress my session. More numbers, a little bit more complexity, but certainly these starting positions that you can manipulate to put different levels of challenge and create different scenarios. So I think this could be helpful. And again, my middle zone for me to coach in, so I can see both groups, and also for safety of players running into each other's grid. And then all we do is we take out the middle grid. So now all of a sudden my goals, my 2 goals become a 4-goal game. And now I've got 4 players playing a 4 versus 4. In this case, the black team has the ball, and so we can see there's a pass, a dribble, and what we can see of the 4 whites is the way that they shift defensively to pressure the ball, to support the ball, and to be recovering. So we've just gone into a development from the 1v1 to the 2v2 to the 4v4. And then our final development, should be no surprise to you that it focused a little bit, is 2 goals, goalkeepers, and in this case we stayed in our 4v4. Now if you appreciate here, what I've been able to do in a 75-minute session is have 4 activities, minimal movement of cones, lots of repetition in the early stages, and now I've got my numbers into more of a competitive game which they like to play. So that, for me, I think is a very clean example of not only a progressive training session, but also the methodology by the way you move the grids, you move the goals to keep the whole thing flowing. So I hope that kind of makes sense. And you're going to be able to create these because David here in about 20 minutes is going to show you exactly how to put this artwork together and then put your notes in it too. So hopefully that was helpful for you. David? Okay, I'm not hearing David then. I will continue. So, just very quickly, because this is really more advanced content or just additional content that we don't want to dwell in too much for the purposes of this presentation tonight. But what I'd like you to think about is soccer as an invasion game. That is to say, we're trying to get the ball, in this case, to another place, the opponent's goal. Certainly, American football is an invasion game, and a lot of our ball sports, traditional American sports, are invasion games. So when you think about explaining tactics to children, which are decisions, you can do that with under 6s. If you've got the ball, try and get down to the other team's goal. That might be the simple instruction. And if you're defending, if you don't have the ball, if we don't have the ball, we're trying to stop them get to our goal. And if we get it, we're trying to get to theirs. That's attacking principles and defending principles. We, at the older ages, we're talking about penetration and we're talking about denying and delaying, but that is the principles. Now, if I'm trying to go to goal and I've got a friend helping me, now I can maybe have passing and I've got help or support. And if I'm defending and I've got a friend, he or she is maybe not trying to win the ball, but they're there in case I don't win it, and they're my backup, they're my help, my cover. And then if there's 3 of us with the ball trying to go to goal, while I've got the ball and my closest friend is helping me, the other one is running away trying to get open or give me some width and spread out. And if there's 3 defenders, one of them is probably trying to get the ball, one of them is probably trying to make sure that I'm supported or helped, and then the other ones are trying to make sure that all those crazy runners are picked up too. That is attacking and defending principles in a 45-second nutshell. So we're talking about pressure, cover, balance. We're talking about penetration, support, width, and mobility, and all these kind of complex ideas. But soccer is a simple invasion game, and there are techniques and tactics to be more effective at it. But that's what we're talking about when we're talking about invasion games. And I'm really going to stop my lecture on that particular subject at that point.
Ian, can we go to a question?
Sure, absolutely.
We have Joe who sent in a question. It made me chuckle. He refers to the fact that when he's coaching a team, how do you address the dynamic with your own child not really listening as well and behaving as well as the other kids? As I struggle with this every time I do a training session, I'm going to hand over to you, Ian, because I certainly don't have an answer to this one.
Yeah, I'm not a parent, so I haven't had that experience firsthand. But I have had an experience, of course, as we all have, of children who are less engaged. And I think the key part of it is to, if you use first names or you use nicknames, be consistent with that. And obviously, I can only imagine it's very difficult, but the tone with your own child should not be any harsher or softer than it would be with any other child in the group. I'm a big proponent of avoiding the situation where the child has to take a time out I believe that is a final recourse, and potentially them not coming back to training for a week is a potential recourse. But I do think that if the child is maybe just not engaged, and so that excuse me, there's a slight acting up, I think there's other things you can do with them. Maybe they could be the ball boy. Maybe they could be the assistant coach. Maybe they could go over and put water in the water jugs while the kids play. Maybe if you're doing an activity where you're the server, they can be the person that provides you the ball to serve in. So that isn't completely to the question of my own child, but I think that the trick is, as we all profess to do, is to treat everybody the same and have some tricks up our sleeve to allow children to still be included, but maybe not have to play the game or do the activity if they're just really not engaged with it.
Thanks.
Okay. Clearly that didn't help you, David, but that's all right.
Oh no, it did absolutely help. Sorry, I was just saying thanks so you could move on. No, I absolutely, I'm sure that will resolve all the issues I have with my son.
Yeah, that's it. That would be $200. So the manual is I think is helpful in this regard. Some of you may recognize on the left there notion of self-determination theory. No, excuse me, not self-determination theory, but child development theory. So we're looking at the children in terms of their physical abilities, which again will vary greatly even at 6, 7, and 8, but certainly more so at 11, 12. Some great physical disparity, cognitive issues, and then there's social, emotional issues. So for example, you may have a group which has been together before, so they're a tight social group. They're experienced, so they're quite willing to be quite feisty and competitive. Another group may be first time with each other, so they're trying to work out those social relationships. They may be a little bit lower skills, so they may be a little bit hesitant with some of the activities. They're not quite sure how they work. So I think social-emotional. Cognitive. If you're really worried that your under 6s, under 8s don't understand spreading out and notions of space, it's perhaps because it's too abstract for them to understand that spreading out is important because you just told them to go and get the ball and put it in the goal, so they don't want to do that. And then obviously physically, some children are just going to be simply more adept in their balance, in their strength, in their agility, and we have to be sensitive to this. My two little guys moving over here on the right, these are the 4 components of soccer we talk about at all our courses: technique, tactics, soccer appropriate fitness, and then the psychology. I would argue that you as coaches in Stonington, with the ages you identified yourself at, should be working in the technical and modest tactical realms. Don't worry about soccer-specific fitness because you're going to be doing it if you're doing a good job teaching technique and tactics. And don't become amateur psychologists right now. Just be good adults with children, but I would be working on technique and tactics. The priorities change, obviously, as we get to older levels and more competitive levels. So in terms of developmentally appropriate, we're talking about physical, cognitive, and socio. So you need to be aware when you're doing the activity, what is it you're trying to develop? Are you trying to develop a physical skill? Are you trying to develop understanding? Or are you trying to develop teamwork, competitiveness, collaboration, so on and so forth? So try to understand what your activities are trying to do in terms of child development. And then understand that your sessions are technical or tactical or physical fitness with a ball, or whether you're really trying to do some psychology training. So this is really the last slide, the key issues. And then make sure that the content is developmentally appropriate. So if the challenge is not significant enough, the children will become bored and underwhelmed. If it's way too difficult, they're going to become frustrated, despondent, and stressed. And so your challenge is to find appropriate challenges which motivate the kid, inspire the kids that they can potentially achieve. And then, of course, and this is the slanty line theory, which I don't have time for tonight, is trying to find a way that every child within your mixed group has an equitable challenge. And so that's why a lot of small group activity is much more beneficial at these ages. Again, this notion of player-centered, so some of the considerations of physical, cognitive, and the socio-emotional. But once you get comfortable with this, and you probably do this all the time with your children as parents, but if you just apply it into their soccer model and think of them as young 8, 9, 10-year-olds and not as currently Messi's or Ronaldo's or Abby Wambachs, it's much more enjoyable because you don't take your child to school and expect them to be doing calculus and Shakespeare necessarily. So why do you take them to soccer and expect them to be playing 11 aside and understanding overlapping halfbacks in a 4-4-2? So we've got to make this developmentally appropriate. There are player competencies. The manual is very strong with these, giving you suggestions of chronological age competencies. What I would say is consider them as stages. So if you read the book and you see that your children can do something, then look to see what the next stage is. If you're looking at that stage and your children aren't there yet, look backwards to see how you might have achieved it if there was a stage skip. So age is helpful, chronological age is helpful, but it is more understanding each developmental step. And again, technique, tactics. Tactics is just decisions, physical, soccer specific, and psychological. And then this is always a very popular part of our course when we meet in person, is the extra responsibility you guys have to get the balls there, manage parents, manage schedules, etc. So I won't spend too much time here. I do believe that continuing to learn is critical. It's an ongoing process, and certainly you guys have participated in that, so I'm very grateful. But the greater learning will be being out there with the kids and then chatting with your husbands, wives, loved ones, co-workers. I think having a personal philosophy as to why you're doing it is good. And then also trying to create an idea for the whole group, even the 6, 8, 10-year-olds, of why they're doing it, what is our culture, what is our identity. Communication pathways. If parents are allowed to assail you after the game, that's a really miserable time for you to be asked to communicate about a child's involvement. And certainly it's not appropriate if it's 5 minutes before training. So you do sometimes have to help your players and your parents with what the communication pathways are. Phone calls, emails, when they happen, and sometimes little group meetings, team meetings actually achieve a lot of the communication that everybody wants to get one-on-one. And then very much to David's point, parents are an asset to be worked with, and you're all parents yourselves, so hopefully you would agree with that. Keep it fun and safe. Those are the steady mantra for US Youth Soccer, and I believe in that critically. It is a challenge because you're a parent, they're a parent, but you do have a responsibility as the coach. So helping them help you and the children, and that's how I express it, is help me as the coach be a more successful coach, please. And so that's where that comes in. I think weekend-long tournaments are not necessarily healthy. I like to see the kids train a lot and then have a logical game schedule, but more emphasis on training than competition. Goal setting, for sure. And then I think if you're an under-10 team and you go and watch the under-14 team occasionally, or you go to a high school game together, not only does it create family, friendships, bonds, but you can actually make it a learning tool, a teaching tool.
Ian, can I just make a comment here about the training to game ratios? Would you mind going back one slide?
Yeah, if I can, I will.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting here for our participants that when we're talking about training to gain ratios, probably the best example of this in action is in the development academies and the ECNL, which are two highest levels of youth play in the United States. And in order to become an ECNL or a development academy program, they have to agree to have high training to gain ratios. So if that's good enough for our elite players, then certainly we should be using that model more and more with our less elite and our younger players, because there's plenty of research to suggest that that's the best way forward. So I think that was worth just mentioning that if those people aren't aware of those two higher levels and what they do in terms of training.
Yeah, and you opened the door, so forgive me, David. 22 players with one soccer ball for a 90-minute game. The ball goes out of bounds, substitutions are made, the goalkeeper handles the ball, and so on and so forth. So for a player's exposure to the ball in a 90-minute game of 11 aside is infinitesimal. It's a really short period of time. Now, just rewind to your environment, 5 aside, 4 aside, whatever it is, for a short-sided game with one ball. The children's opportunity to experience the ball and experience decisions based on experiencing the ball and technical is greatly reduced to the type of environment you can create in training with multiple balls, multiple goals, multiple stations, lots of activity. So if you want your children to be proficient technically and proficient in their decision making, you have to give them inordinate amounts of exposure. And of course, this is where Europeans will tell you about the good old days where we played in the streets. But sandlot soccer is really something we should be looking to recreate in our training environments, and certainly greater frequency of training to games, for sure, absolutely. I think sometimes the short-term plan is getting through the first 15 minutes of training, and the long-term plan is getting to the end of training. And for the most part, I'm assuming amateur coaches, parents by trade, and professional people in your real life. So, if David is coming to you and asking you for your 12-month calendar of activity, that might be a bit unrealistic. But certainly being sensitive to when you might be putting the children into competition, maybe some road trips, holiday school breaks. So I think that's good planning. The Rosters organization, sure, training. What is it you would like to achieve from training? Is it just to have fun and survive the 75 minutes? Sometimes it is that. But specifically, could it be we want to get better at shooting the ball, we want to get better at passing? How are you going to do it? So you can identify what it is you'd like to achieve, and then how you're going to do it, and then you need to assess the outcome. So in review with the children before they all rush off to the next activity, we had a great day today. We did a lot of shooting. We got more shots on goal. So when we come back next week and we play again, I can see that improvement. So I think these are not things that you're sitting there laboring over when you should be working at your real job. But this helps you. It makes it so much more enjoyable for you as the coach if you put a little bit of thought into the what, how, and the outcome for sure. And so in our manual, there's a few ideas about these topics, excuse me, in the back of the manual, and normally we would open this up for a discussion. What we're going to do now is just see which of these topics is interesting to you by way of a question, and then it gives David and Jeff some opportunity when you meet in a couple of weeks to potentially talk about these topics.
Thanks, Ian. Let's go to then the third and final poll question, and we'll pull it up on the screen now. Excuse me. And as you are answering this question, what I would like to say here is for Joe, Danielle, Mike, Chris, and anyone else who's sent in a question that we haven't answered, if we don't have time tonight, because we want to stick quite rigidly to the 9 o'clock deadline for your sakes, then we will certainly get those answers to you in person on the 23rd, but before then, in writing, we'll put a sheet together and get that over to you. So If you could answer the question on there, which of these discussion topics is the most relevant in your coaching role? And I'll give you another 5 seconds or so. You can choose multiple areas. It doesn't have to be just one. Okay, and we'll close the poll now and share the results. And so we've got a pretty wide range.
Fantastic.
So lots to talk about. Okay, Ian, shall I move on then to talk specifically about the 23rd that's coming up? So what's going to happen on the 23rd is that we're going to have a registration event between 7:45 and 8 o'clock. It's important that everyone turns up in that time period so we can make a prompt start at 8 o'clock into the course. With you, when you come, please make sure you bring appropriate footwear for indoor soccer. I recommend you bring some shin guards just in case you catch someone or someone catches you while we're playing. There is we do recommend you play, but there isn't a mandatory reason or necessity for you to play. So if you're carrying an injury, then that's not a big issue for us. But certainly we want you to participate, even if you can't play from the sideline. On the left, you can see we've got squad 1 and 2. On the right, we've got squads 3 and 4. And for the first couple of hours, nearly 3 hours of the session, we'll be split as 2 squads, and we'll be working on either side of the gymnasium floor. Now that's assuming that we don't get a 80-degree day on the 23rd, and then we may change our plans to go outdoors. But assuming that it's going to be relatively cold, we're going to split the gym in half, and then Jeff and I are going to work either side. We will then bring the group together to play small-sided games, and then go through a model technical session, and then go into the close and questions. So it's going to be a busy morning. Bring plenty of drink with you, bring the right equipment, and what we're going to do in terms of the use of the squads is to give everyone the opportunity to play but also to rest. We'll use squad 1 in session 1 and squad 2 in session 2, so that we will rotate the squads around, and similarly with 3 and 4. So here's your squads. This has been, I've tried to group them as best I can with people you know. We've got 1 or 2 people coming from outside of the Stonington Westerly area, so those people will certainly be made very welcome. And I've tried to group you here by squads that I think make sense on experience and also the friendship groups. If you have any reason that you're going to be late, when I send you an email tomorrow with the video recording, please make a note of that, and then make sure you call me if there's going to be any reason why you're not going to be attending the session on time. I would now like to go to the homework task, and as we said at the beginning, there's 4 components of this course. Usually it's 9 hours in person, face-to-face with the instructor. So we're going to ask you now to spend a little bit of time doing some session planning, something that's often done at the higher levels of the courses, but certainly if you're being the head coach of a team or even an assistant, something that you really need to get used to and become relatively proficient with. So as a candidate, and this is for each person, we want you to bring with you a session plan, and you can refer to pages 22 to 24 of the manual to get some ideas. And we want that session plan to be focused on technical development that you develop through the coaching session, from a warm-up into a technical training and then into a small-sided game. And to give you some ideas of the techniques that we'll be looking at on the course, if you go to pages 34 through, I believe it's 37, that gives you a whole range of the techniques that we'll be looking at. And in fact, on pages 46 and on page 47, there are some examples of activities and how to progress them. So there's plenty of help, and we'll also include a session plan for you to follow. So before we go, I'd like to get everybody on the same page in terms of how to register for Academy Soccer Coach. This Academy Soccer Coach, our partner of the NSCAA, and also an organization that makes planning sessions very easy and quite fun and enjoyable. So I'm going to get off the slides now and go to the internet here. and I'm going to show you where we go. So I'm just going to make sure here we're going to close up our poll. Okay, so let me just now bring up the internet. Okay, it's coming up slowly, I believe. Ian, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Can you see anything other than the blank blue screen?
I see a blank blue screen, probably like the rest of our participants.
Okay, let me see if I can get that up. It's just giving me the PowerPoint presentation. Just bear with me 1 second, everyone. Let's see if I can get this to show.
There you go.
So that's the session plan. I want to bring up the internet. Now let me see if I can bring up the internet. Cool. Let me see 1 more second. I think the internet's just bringing up a blue screen for whatever reason. Okay, so what I was going to show everybody was how to log in and then access the material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in a more detailed note for everybody so that they can see. Hold on 1 second, it says paused. I don't know, we're having a few technical issues. Ian, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I believe now we have the internet site up, is that right? Is that what you can see?
Yes, we did. Yep, we did.
Okay, all right. So while it's showing, I'm going to move through it pretty quick here. If you look on the screen here, in the bottom segment of the screen, you'll see it says NSCAA Level 3 Diploma. I'm going to send you a link that will get you to this website. Once you click on that link, it will then bring up a screen, and you pull up on this screen and you put in your username and password. Now your username is going to be unique to you, and you can create that. So I'm going to call mine Test1, and my password is going to be Test123. I'm going to repeat that. Just bear with me a second as I do this. Not the fastest typer in the world. Oh, I think we got a problem with my... Okay. My email address, obviously that's the email address that I am going to use to receive correspondence. You're going to receive an email from Academy Soccer Coach with your log-on instructions and the password and username that you used. Let me do this again. This shows how bad a typer I really am. And then obviously put in your name and then your last name. And part of this, the activation code is going to be something that will be unique to you, and it will be included in the email that you are sent from me. So when you receive that email, that code there is yours and yours alone. So please don't share it with anyone, otherwise they'll be into your account and then you won't be able to get on. I believe that's my test account. Once you've completed your activation code, click on the terms and conditions and then click submit. Oh, and I need to submit. Please select your membership group. Sorry, yes, at the top, select the course. There we go. Okay. All right, and then when you have completed that entrance, then you can click on where it says visit the NSCAA Coach platform. You then put in the username and password that you selected. So you've got one more step. And I'm going to put mine in here, and then click on login. Okay, and let's hope we can do it this time. Of course, it's not going to remember me. It worked earlier on, I promise. Let me just try one more time. Okay. No. Okay, so I'm going to go to my contingency. Don't worry, I have one. And I'm going to pull up my personal account for the... No, nothing's working. We might have to do this again all tomorrow night if this doesn't work. All right, I I don't know why that's not coming up. Okay, let's go to an example of the session plan. So I won't be able to show everyone how to use the session planner, but we will be, or the activity planner, but we will bring that up in the instructions that I send to you. So let me just switch it so that you can see my PDF. Okay, which I believe is going to come up right now. Okay, so when you eventually get into the software, you will then be brought up to the opportunity to set up an activity. So on the left-hand side, where these 4 boxes on the left are situated, those are activities. And then the main document itself is the session planner. When you complete the session planner, you'll put your name in there, the date of the course being the 23rd of March, and how much time you would allocate to your session. Suggest something in the region of 60 to 75 minutes, depending on your age group. And then whatever the topic is that you're going to decide from the range of topics that you have to your disposal from the manual, which is any technical topic. On the left, you will insert the diagrams that you have created. The diagrams are very, very easy to create, I'm going to try and, if I can, just spend a minute in a minute to try and find out and see if I can get on there so I can actually show you. In the organization box, you're going to put in the details of the activities, the instructions. On the right-hand side, where it says coaching points, you're going to put in some of the dimensions that you might use, and then the main coaching points that you want to include in your session, and any progressions that you have. So what would you do to make the activity slightly more difficult or slightly easier? In order to insert a diagram that you've created, you click in one of the boxes, you go to wherever you've saved the diagram, and I'm going to pull up my activities, and then you go in and you select the PNG file, which creates into a PNG file that you like, and then that will drop into that box. So once you've created it and saved it, then it's easy to drop into the session planner. And what we were looking for is a warm-up activity based on the theme. So in this case, I've done a passing theme. So you've got this activity, number 1 is a warm-up. Number 2 is then gone into an environment where there's some defenders being involved, 1 defender against 3 attackers or passers. And then we've taken it into a small-sided game activity with conditions. And then the final activity is a small-sided game without conditions and letting them play and only jumping in if we see anything that's so amazing to point out to our players. So that is a session plan that we will make available to you when we go through this demonstration. Ian, have you got any points you want to make while I try and find out and try and get onto the activity planner?
So, coaches, as David said, everything you see on this page, which is in that light blue, is where you can just type in text. So you type it in, and it sits there, and it's fine. This document, when you finish with it, you'll save it as a PDF. These little diagrams on the left are remarkably easy to create if and when David opens it for us. There are actually female and male characters. You can change the colors of the uniforms if you want to mess about with the colors of the uniforms. And the template comes with a number of different rectangles, fields, so you don't have to really draw very much at all. You simply drag your players in and position them, and then you use these lines. The red lines, in this case, denote player movement, and in this case, the hash lines are denoting ball movement. What is really nice about this program, once you get it going, is you could take this warm-up activity and use it in another lesson plan and have 3 different activities below it. So once you start creating 3 or 4 of these diagrams, let's say, for example, you use 12 of them, 3 warm-up, 3 first, 3 second, and 3 final activities, you can cut and paste them around. I celebrated my 50th birthday last month, and I can use this program, and it's really fun to use, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. Now, you can also create these pictures just by themselves and put a text box on them for your own fun. But in our lesson plan, this is how we create them. It's a really nice product once you get it going.
Okay, let me see if I can get back on here. I think I might be able to. Let's see if I can. Here we go. Yes, I think I am. Here we go. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. I have brought up the template. Let's see if we can get this showing up for everybody. I think we have. Okay, so when you eventually get into the system, you will be brought to a screen that represents the soccer field. So a few things just to mention here. I'll be 5 minutes and then we'll certainly let you go. At the bottom of the screen there is a carousel of different sized fields. So for us, working with young players, a lot of our work will be done within a grid, a square. So I'm going to choose just a normal grid. And this can be any dimensions you wish, and you can actually put the dimensions in by typing them in, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. I tend to, when I create my session plans, because when you print it out, it'll print green, I tend to do it black and white. I know Ian tends to do that. But you have a choice of a green background, a grey background, or black and white background. Now, as you're starting to create your activity, you've got two sets of players on the left. My players at the moment are in white and then in Barcelona. And I can change the color and the style of the uniform. So I can go red shirts with white socks and white shorts. I can also go with, if I wanted to change the color of the Barcelona to become Celtic, I could choose it to be green and white stripes. In fact, green or white hoops even. Let me go back over here. And then we could, we've got blue shorts. But anyway, there you can see. So we can change the colors pretty easy. Now what we can do when we place our players on the field is drag them, point at a player we like their shape, and then we can drag them. If we don't like enough, we don't think they're pointing the right way or doing what we want them to do, we can go to the plus symbol and then select more players. But let's say I want to choose one of these. There's a player running away. I click on him, I drag on him. Now that's pretty monotonous if you've got 15 or 20 players you want to do. So at the top left, it says clone. So whatever I click on now, it's going to create a clone. So I'm going to now click on one of my Celtic players, and now I'm going to click and click and click and click as much as I want. Now this is great when we're trying to put an activity where there's lots of players, maybe a dribbling activity. The other thing we can do is then give everyone a ball by using the clone feature for the ball. So we can put them on nice and quick. Okay, so that's the balls and the players. We can also put on individual cones. We can do that by using clone. We can just change the color. Or if you click on where it says cones, we can run a whole line of cones from one side of the field to the other by just clicking and dragging across. Now you can see also there's lots of different types of goals. I'm going to choose a small-sided goal. I'm going to put one at the top. Oh, I'm going to put one there at the top end. And then I'm going to click on and put one at the bottom, and I'm going to take off the clone feature. Now the other areas that we might want to start working with is indicating which one's a pass, which one's a shot, which one's a dribble. So on the right-hand side you'll see that it says dribble, running with the ball, passing, shooting, lofted pass, curve pass. You can play with these. But let me give you a couple. Dribbling, if I want to indicate that the player has dribbled from one place to another, I can click on and make it a wavy line. If I want to pass from one player to another, I can click on and it's a dotted line with an arrow at the end. We also can put in movement of one player that will be in red, and another movement of the opposition player that will be in orange. We can do arc runs where they run from one place to another in a bent run. So when you look at Ian's diagrams, he shows some bent runs as well. And then we can also do some other things like a lofted pass where we click where we want the pass to originate and then where to land. So there's all sorts of things you can do with this tool. It's very, very easy to use, and using the clone feature, which is a new feature, makes it so much easier. When you're finished, you want to, of course, save it. There's two types of saving. Yes?
Okay, just
Go
a
ahead,
couple
Ian.
of things very quickly. Could you drag down a number or a letter from the top of the screen?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so coaches, you see you have that ability. Also, David, could you take this goal and the young man at the bottom of the screen, just drag them off?
Yeah, sure.
So you can see, coaches, you can just literally drag things off that you don't want. You don't have to take it all the way to the trash bin there. David, click on the gray so they can see how the field changes. So you can change that too. You can obviously change to have a third team of colors, and there are female icons, and you can change the skin tone of the players as well if you choose to. So there's a few options there. The only other thing, David, I would like to just have you cover with them briefly is the text box below and the ASC file as opposed to the JPEG.
Yep. So the text box, add a text box. If you want to put dimensions onto the diagram, for example, I could put in here, it's 20 yards. So I clicked on text, add text box, it appears on the screen, and then I can drag it off and place it wherever I want it to be, at the side or at the top or on the field itself. We also can create, I'm going to just, let me clear this. Actually, no, let me go to generate image. So there's two ways of saving the file, generate image, and if I click on generate image, it'll take a picture of what is on the screen and make it into a PNG file or JPEG file and allow you to save it on your computer. So if I click on play, it'll allow me to save it. The other way to save it is a way for you to make it into an ASC file, which allows you to come back at another time and then use the same diagram and move players around. So if I don't want to use this diagram again, which if you look at my diagram you probably would never want to use this again, I could just generate image. If I want to use it again, well, I think I might be able to save it as an ASC file where it says save ASC file. And then when I want to load an ASC file back, I can click on load it and I can find it. So those are the functions. It's real easy to use. You've got access to this for the next 30 days. So tomorrow I'll send you over the link and also the instructions on how to create this plan, and then you can get going on it. And if you have any questions for me or for Ian or for Jeff, we'll provide you with our email addresses so you can drop us a line if you have any questions. So, Ian, any concluding comments from you?
No, I think the attendance tonight was great, and I'm very grateful to you, David, and Jeff for joining us. This is the future of coach education. Comfort of your own home, some time on the grass together, but go home and play with some of these concepts and some of the stuff, and good luck to you all.
Okay, and let me see if I can bring Jeff in very briefly. Jeff, I've unmuted you. Are you still there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Jeff, we look forward to seeing you and the candidates on the 23rd of March. Don't get too suntanned.
I'll try not.
All right. Well, thank you very much to Jeff and to Ian for joining us today, and of course to all of our coaches that have joined us from their time with their families. So thanks very much, and we look forward to seeing everybody bright and breezy on the 23rd of March at Pine Point School in Stonington.